The President of the United States wasting no time purging bigotry from the federal government and everything it touches, signing an executive order yesterday, quote, ending illegal discrimination and restoring merit-based opportunity, leading to today all of the various federal agencies needing to shutter their DEI offices and place all that staff on leave by 5 p.m. this afternoon. That is just over an hour from now. For more on everything that's happening right now and what it means for the country, I want to bring in Will Hild. He's the Executive Director of Consumers Research, and he joins us on the phone. Will, good to talk to you, sir.
Great to be with you on a fantastic day.
It really is. President Trump today really, I think, set the tone yesterday, set the tone for much of his administration here by purging all of this racial and gender prejudice out of the government. Give us a sense of what happened.
Well, basically, he has been on a shock and awe bombing campaign against every nook and cranny of DEI and affirmative action and race and sex-based hiring and promotion within the federal government, and all of the DEI nonsense that the government was trying to force into corporations. Part of one of the wars we've been fighting is against BlackRock and State Street and Vanguard, these big asset managers that have been pushing DEI at these corporations. But they've been aided and abetted by the Biden administration. The federal government was basically threatening corporations if they didn't do this kind of thing. And we could not have gotten a more 180 administration in the past 2 days. They are basically saying, not only are you going to stop doing DEI, not only are you going to stop pushing corporations to do DEI, but your job is now to hunt DEI out of every public nonprofit and public corporation. So we are going to be starting to enforce the civil rights laws against discrimination in hiring rather than ignoring them and pushing racial and sex-based discrimination. It is a fantastic day for America.
The president writes in this executive order, the federal government is charged with enforcing our civil rights laws. The purpose of this order is to ensure that it does so by ending illegal preferences and discrimination. It is the policy of the United States to protect the civil rights of all Americans and to promote individual initiative, excellence, and hard work. I therefore order all executive departments and agencies to terminate all discriminatory and illegal preferences, mandates, policies, programs, activities, guidance, regulations, enforcement actions, consent orders, and requirements. I further order all agencies to enforce our longstanding civil rights laws and to combat illegal private sector DEI preferences, mandates, policies, programs, and activities. Will, I know this is really your realm, talking about these private sector, especially publicly traded companies. The president's saying here that he wants to purge that bigotry from the private sector. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of these corporations were engaging in illegal race and sex-based hiring and promotion schemes, often operated out of their DEI departments. And they were, instead of being punished by the federal government, which is supposed to prevent this type of discrimination, they were being aided and abetted, and in some cases threatened by the federal government if they didn't do this kind of nonsense. And so we are about to see, I believe, a sea change in corporate America. Some of it will be voluntary. A lot of corporations didn't want to be engaging in this kind of thing, but felt like they had to. A lot of them do, but are about to face a very different legal and regulatory environment. And so this is going to be a huge shift for corporate America.
Also here, under the subsection, encouraging the private sector to end illegal DEI discrimination and preferences, the president's order, I think this is amazing, asks all of the agencies to each, quote, identify up to 9 potential civil compliance investigations of publicly traded corporations, large nonprofit corporations or associations, foundations with assets of $500 million or more, state and local bar and medical associations, and institutions of higher education with endowments over $1 billion. So if I'm reading this correctly, Will Hild, the president's asking the various agencies of the federal government to each identify private institutions or nonprofits who are racially prejudiced and to present them for civil action.
You're 100% right. Make no mistake. This is a declaration of total war against the DEI industrial complex. Every nonprofit, every university, every medical system, every corporation in America is now put on notice. If they are engaging in race and sex-based discrimination in hiring and promotion, they are now a target of the Trump administration. And they should be, because they're breaking federal law, soup to nuts. And it is finally the reckoning that has been needed and necessary in this country so that people can have their civil rights enforced has finally come.
I mean, corporate America has pretended for some time that these laws don't exist. These civil rights laws don't exist. They straight up make claims that they are going to target their hiring based on skin color. And then the way that all of our institutions have acted is that, oh, that's totally okay. That's fine. It's not, Will. It's completely and flatly illegal, isn't it?
100%. It's in violation of the Civil Rights Act. It's in violation of a whole host of other individual regulations. And in addition, a lot of these industries are governed not just by the Department of Labor that governs anybody that hires somebody, but about specific, departments that cover their industry. So, for example, HHS, Health and Human Services, has a civil rights division. Health systems are not supposed to be discriminating. And yet, during the COVID pandemic, you had a health system in Boston saying that they were going to hand out medical treatment based on trying to repair, historical injustices. And so they were going to start engaging in racial profiling for triaging treatment and patients. I mean, that's insane. That's talking about sequencing medical care to people based on the color of their skin.
Yes.
That's the exact kind of thing. I think when people hear this, they think, well, is it worth all that? Do they really need to be targeting all these companies and organizations? 100% they do. Because as you said, these companies were engaged in rank, race, and sex-based discrimination. They've been doing it blatantly, and it has to end. It has to be enforced.
Well, also, these companies have propagandized that racial prejudice and gender prejudice is appropriate. That's one of the things. So, like a company like Disney, for instance, it infects all of the content that they create and target towards children, and they use that to create a framework by which they can do that within their own ranks.
Exactly. And what ends up happening in a lot of corporations, one of the big reasons we've been fighting against it, is somebody who is selected to be at a company explicitly because their race or sex ends up focused solely on that and expanding that within a company because their whole role is dependent on that rather than serving the customer.
Right.
Any competent person of any race or sex, they don't need racial and sexual quotas to keep their job, so they don't worry about it. They focus on making good movies or drilling for oil or making good medicine, right? They don't worry about what sex they are, or what race they are, and what special handouts. If that's how you got the job, then you care very, very deeply for expanding and extending that. And that's what happens at these DEI departments. It's the only thing they focus on. It's just more of the same, more race and sex-based discrimination. And they are going to have to be chiseled out. It's going to be a long fight. I don't want to paint too picture of a triumphalism here. We've got a long way to go. But the Trump administration today has set down a marker. This is a top priority for them. And I am fully confident that with the help of the federal government and groups like Consumers Research, like us, who are going to continue this fight, and Robbie Starbuck, comrades in arms in this, in 4 years, we're going to be look back and have put this to bed the way the Jacobins were put to bed and the Soviets were put to bed. It will be in the dustbin of history.
Will Hild, will you and Consumers Research engage in shareholder activism around this issue? In other words, are you going to go to these meetings and make proposals to get these companies on the right track?
That's part of what we do, but we also run multi-million-dollar name and shame campaigns for companies that engage in rank, sex, and racial discrimination. I mean, we ran a multi-million-dollar ad campaign against American Express, or what we called Un-American Express, for example, who was holding anti-white racial bias trainings, claiming that capitalism was inherently racist and white supremacist. So we're going to continue to do that. We're going to continue to attack the financial services framework that supports all this, namely Larry Fink and BlackRock, the CEO of the world's largest asset management company. That infamous quote where he talks about forcing behaviors that many of your listeners have probably seen, he was talking about forcing race and sex-based quotas onto the boards of every company they're invested in. So we're going to continue to attack the whole scaffolding that supports this nonsense.
Have they backed off on any of that? I know that BlackRock and some of these big asset managers, they've tried to make ovations to the right now because you have had, I think, considerable success in calling attention to this deranged left-wing activism. Have they reversed course at all?
It appears so. They are slowly retrenching. In fact, they changed some of the guidance around how they would handle shareholder voting this year for the assets that they hold, and they took out the explicit race and sex-based quotas that they formerly supported. And they've put in some mealy-mouthed, vague language about generally supporting diversity. That's not good enough They need to completely disavow what they were doing, but it is progress and sign that we were having an effect. And I'm sure that after they've seen these executive orders, they're going to be even more afraid to be engaging in this kind of un-American, illegal nonsense.
Yeah, and now these companies are going to have civil compliance investigations hanging over them if they continue engaging in this kind of bigotry. It's just an amazing thing, and what a difference an administration makes. Hey, Will Hild from Consumers Research, thank you, sir. Good to have you on today.
Thanks so much for having me on.
Always. There he is, Will Hild with Consumers Research.